All rise and shout. Let's get to what's trending.
The Big 12 is so good, so good. And there was really something exhilarating about the climb.
Everyone in the program, coaches, players, fans, everybody around BYU is so ready for this moment. And it's going to be a magical year.
What's trending, presented by Feastbox, donating 10% of every order to Full of Hope, a charitable organization feeding hungry families. As Dave just mentioned, we now know the layout and schedule for BYU men's basketball as it pertains to year one of the Big 12. We don't know when the dates are with specific opponents. We know who is visiting the Marriott Center and where BYU will go, and if BYU will play home and road against said teams. So it's enough to get us thinking, right?
Yes.
For sure. And frankly, it's enough to make some of us sweat profusely, notably Mark Pope and his staff. But after the Big 12 announced that men's and women's basketball matchups for the 2023-24 season, Dave, what is the first thing that jumps out to you when you looked and saw, okay, these are the matchups?
I kind of like a lot of everybody was like, okay, is Kansas coming? That's probably number one. And then you sit there and they go, oh, okay. Well, then who else is coming? Is Texas going to come? I know all our sports are going to Texas. Is someone going to actually come here? And then you see that and you go, okay. And then you look at the rest of them and you go, well, it's going to be something. It's going to be something the likes BYU fans have never seen before. A schedule as difficult as BYU has ever seen before. It's going to be fun to see what happens, but it is what it is. Goliath's coming.
I think one word summed it up for me. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, while Kansas is not visiting the Marriott Center, BYU is certainly making a road trip to Lawrence, which will be super exciting for BYU fans. I imagine Cougar basketball fans are already trying to figure out how to get to Lawrence again, not just for the Big 12 football opener, but just to find a way to be in Fog Allen Fieldhouse in that historic venue to watch BYU take on Kansas in that basketball matchup. But I do love that Texas finally visits Provo in something. The Texas women's volleyball team is not in Provo. No. Women's soccer team is not in Provo. Women's basketball team is not in Provo, so no rematch with Shaylee Gonzalez in Provo. But Texas men's basketball will visit Provo. I like that. And then remember when Houston was ranked #1 for the majority of last season? Oh, yeah.
They might be again.
They're visiting Provo as well under their longtime head coach.
Are they the new Gonzaga? They're just going to come in ranked 1, 2, or 3?
Dave, it feels like there are 4 Gonzagas in this conference, which is wild.
There might be a couple more than that. But it's going to be, they're going up against storied basketball programs.
Yes.
They're all heavily invested in recruiting and growing and all those things. We've watched them on Big Monday for years, and now they're coming.
The away-only schedule is interesting for the BYU men's side. I already mentioned Kansas. A road trip to West Virginia is never easy. That's the longest trip that BYU could possibly make, that and UCF. At Texas Tech, at Oklahoma. So those teams, all 4 of those teams will not visit the Marriott Center. But home away, Baylor, I like the idea of playing Baylor twice. I think that's just a natural budding rivalry for BYU. Oklahoma State, home and away. And UCF, I didn't think that because of the travel involved there that BYU would be home and away with UCF. But, hey, the Golden Knights are going to make a trip to Provo, and BYU is going to head to Orlando. I feel like it's about as good as it could be. And it certainly is difficult as I expected it to be. The one thing is just your initial thought. No Kansas in the Marriott Center. I was really, really hoping like, oh, will BYU get Kansas in the Marriott Center? But that road trip's going to be a lot of fun.
And, you know, in football it was, hey, we're going to get Texas here again.
Yeah.
Oklahoma comes, and so that's cool. And Texas is over there in Austin in October. And so here's Houston, as you mentioned a moment ago, coming in. And maybe they're the best team in the conference. You know, Kansas is certainly the most historic, but Houston lately has been on fire, and we get a shot at them. So we may have a shot at the #1 team in the country on our home floor. I don't think TCU or Cincinnati will be #1. Texas won't be #1. Baylor could be up there, depending on what they have coming back.
Yeah.
But Houston probably the only team that's got a shot at being #1 coming into the Marriott Center. Of course, when BYU goes to Kansas, they could be #1 when they go on the road. But West Virginia's gone through so much trouble lately that all of a sudden some of the guys have left since Bob Huggins was fired in the last month, and so maybe all of a sudden West Virginia becomes a different kind of game.
Yeah.
Certainly a tough one. They're all tough, though. There's no I'd be curious to see if you're Kansas and you're looking at that going, okay, we got a couple of cream puffs. They're the new guys and this and that. But as the new kids on the block look at these guys, they're going, okay, well, there's no week off. There's no Pepperdine on a down year coming in.
No.
There's no Loyola Marymount.
There's no Portland.
There's no Portland.
Nothing even close to that. I mean, I made the comparison last week that UCF, and we'll get to John Rothstein's projections in just a moment, but UCF now in multiple publications has been picked to finish last of the 14 basketball teams.
Right.
It's early, but UCF is probably on par with where Santa Clara was last year. And Santa Clara was a good team. Santa Clara was a team that finished better in the West Coast Conference than BYU did.
Right.
It's like I feel like that's as low as it goes, is Santa Clara. And Santa Clara embarrassed BYU in the Marriott Center last year. That's where we are. That's the worst team. This is eye-opening. There's a good chance that half of the 18 conference games that BYU plays this season could be against top 25 competition. And while we like to cast extra spotlight on the top 25, it's about quadrant 1 opportunities, right? Yep. Like it's every away game that BYU plays this year in conference is probably a quad 1 game.
Adding to the mystery of it all is the makeup of the team. If you think years back, if you got Haas and Toulson and that group going into this schedule, you're like,
let's go. Let's do this.
Toe to toe. Well, this year's team is so new. This trip coming up to Croatia is going to be crucial just to give them a couple weeks of playing together. But we don't even really know what kind of team we got, as opposed to, hey, we're marching in with guns a-blazing. And maybe BYU marches in with guns a-blazing. We just don't know that due to the newness. And so then that adds the mystery of, well, we know what those guys are. We're not even sure what we are, but we know what they are. And we know they're going to be excited to see us.
It's intrigue, mystery, yes. Like all appropriate words for this BYU men's basketball schedule.
But isn't it great? Because what if we were breaking down another WCC schedule? Okay, we're going to Pepperdine, and then we got the LMU, and then, okay, when's Gonzaga? That's the only team you look for, right? When do they come to Provo? Maybe when does St. Mary's come to Provo? If you just flip-flop where we were, and what if we were still there, we'd be still hoping to get to the big time.
Yeah.
Now we're in it, and we see what's coming, and it's why we want to be in it, right? They're that good. It's why we want to be in it. But I think Mark Pope said it best. It's like climbing the mountain. And we're at the bottom of the mountain, and it's straight up. It's like climbing the Matterhorn.
Yeah, grab your gear. I hope it's high-level gear.
But we'll be there for the climb, We'll see what happens.
Every team in the conference in the Big 12, outside of maybe UCF, is a Gonzaga or a St. Mary's. That caliber of basketball team. I know that's a loose comparison, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like the metrics and the roster and the talent and the athleticism, maybe for the most part, even better than a St. Mary's. Like this conference is going to be more athletic, and they will play with more speed and more pace,
and more depth.
Yes, every team is at least as good as St. Mary's or Gonzaga outside of UCF, and UCF is no slouch.
So it's not like the sky isn't falling. It's just it's a new sky, And we're looking up, going, okay, a lot of different stars up there. That's where we got to go. That's where we got to go.
Dave, you've been playing your local municipal course in the West Coast Conference, and you've been invited to go play Bethpage Black or Augusta National, right?
Just bring a lot of balls.
Stock up on your golf balls. Let's go.
Hey, John Rothstein released his Big 12 Hoops preview, and he's got BYU picked 13th out of the 14. Mm-hmm. UCF picked 14th. We don't even know what UCF's got, but they're picked 14th.
Much like BYU.
By John. So does it surprise you that this national writer's got the Cougars to finish second to last in their debut season?
I wish I were shocked or surprised or one of those things, but no. I feel like this makes perfect sense based on what BYU has done the last 2 years, which is not make the NCAA tournament. 2 years ago, BYU was an Elite Eight team in the NIT. It was a nice run with Alex Barcelo in his final campaign, but last year, again, BYU finishes 5th in the West Coast Conference.
Yeah, back-to-back years in 5th place in the WCC is telling.
So what did BYU do in the last 2 years to deserve better than this pick? That's why I'm not shocked or surprised at all. I am maybe a little surprised, Dave, that they're not at the bottom.
Right.
I thought maybe BYU is going to be picked 14th out of 14. But, I mean, when you're 13 and 14, we're splitting hairs at that point, so it can't be that surprising. But I had kind of prepared myself that I might see BYU on the bottom of the list because this is what prognosticators do. This is what experts and insiders and analysts do. They look at, okay, what did you do recently? What have you done for me lately? And maybe if you're super in-depth, like you talk to the head coach, then you go back further, the last 2 years, you kind of see what's coming down the pipeline. And I know Rothstein is a thorough dude, and he's good friends with Mark Pope as well. But I think 13th is totally fair here. I don't. If you put BYU up around 8, people would be like, "What?
Right.
What do you know that we don't?"
The difference, I think, with the football poll and this one, football's picked 11th, but you look at that and you can go, I could see where they could probably be 8th. Maybe it's a touchdown difference between 8th and 11th, and because all those teams seem to be about the same. Basketball is totally different. Those teams are better. They are Big 12 ready because they've been in it. And Cincinnati's a little bit further down the road, and Houston's certainly a better program than a lot of the current Big 12 teams. But football, you make the argument, well, it could be 10th, could be 9th, could be. But I don't think you can argue that BYU should be 12th in the Big 12. I think 13 or 14 to start.
It feels fair.
Is right with what they've earned, where they are,
Yes.
and it also gives Mark Pope a great chance to do something better than that and turn a few heads.
The beautiful opportunity is there, right?
Yeah, if BYU's picked third, it's
it's pressure's on.
A beat down every, because but now you're just the underdog going in, and I think
basically every game.
He likes that role.
Yeah.
As underdog.
BYU typically, just from a whole athletic department standpoint, seems to relish that and thrive in it.
Now, can you be the underdog and answer the bell 3 times a week? We'll see.
Another great part about this is, let's say you do have 3 Big 12 games in a week, the way it's slated out. You play on Big Monday, and then you play Thursday and Saturday, whatever. I don't know how the schedule is going to lay out, but there are 2 or 3 games. If you win one of those, I mean, I would be okay if BYU won 6 conference games. Seriously, if you go 6-12, and then you can
go 6-12. That's awful. And well, all right, give me the 6.
They're all quality wins.
Yeah.
You went 6-12, but you have 6 quad 1 wins.
Right. 6-12 and a decent preseason could get you in the big dance.
Yes. Like maybe they're quad 2 if they're at home, depending on where the opponent's metrics sit. But still, you have 6 quad 1 or quad 2 wins right there. If you can find a quad 1 win or 2 in non-conference, now you bump up that metric a little bit more. And it's not crazy to think that BYU at 17-14 overall, because of the quality that they would put together potentially in the Big 12, they've got a bubble-licious resume. They're on the bubble, which they weren't last year. Like they didn't even really flirt with the bubble last year.
No, and all these teams are coming for blood too, right? No one plays nice in this league, so even coming to the Marriott Center where it's going to be really hard for teams to win, they're relishing that, right? Texas will be going, sweet, we're going to the Marriott Center. It's going to be packed.
Yes.
It's going to be on ESPN.
They want
Let's go there and play and not let's go there and lay down on the sword. Well, we've seen many teams come in and lay down on the sword in the Marriott Center, and that's made for fun nights for BYU. But not this group. This group's coming in going, I need that win because I got Kansas next week. It's this is a game you can't lose if you're a team in the Big 12. You can't lose to BYU, because you also have these games coming. And so we're going to get their best. We're going to get their best home and away. It's going to be fun to watch.
Let's go.
It's going to be interesting. It's not going to be disappointing. It's going to be interesting. Because if they all come in and they all beat us, it's like, okay, that's the difference between the league we are in and the league we are now in.
What kind of home court advantage exists for BYU in the Big 12? We're about to find out. We're months away from beginning to find that out.
The Rock is preparing itself.
Yes.
And then they're going to reveal themselves. And even those guys will have to know, can we bring it 3 games in a row? I believe they can, but it's going to be, hey, some tough times are ahead. But these are the times we want.
All right, John Rothstein of CBS Sports, along with those season projections and where he expects all 14 Big 12 teams to finish, gave us our stat of the day. Let's roll it out.
It's the BYU Sports Nation stat of the day.
The Big 12 teams from last year played an average of 21 Quadrant 1 games last year. They played 21 games. So if a college basketball team has, 31 or 32 games on the schedule, that's 2/3 of your games.
Most of them league games.
That are Quadrant 1. He added BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, the 4 teams joining the Big 12, played an average of 9.8 Quad 1 games last season. They are going to more than double the difficulty and the challenge on their previous schedule. That is quite the jump. And he says it's a brand new weight class, which I know resonates with you. You covered boxing for years in Las Vegas.
Boxing taught me a lot of things. So there's a lot of great fights in the welterweight division.
Yeah.
147 pounds. But then there are 3 other divisions separating the welterweight from the heavyweights. BYU's going from the welterweight division right up to the heavyweight. So this is a young Oscar De La Hoya against a Mike Tyson in his prime. That's exactly what this is.
Oscar, let's go ahead and build with protein. Let's get in the weight room
and Oscar, I know Oscar. His strategy would be, I'm not even getting close to him. I'm going to run around here. But the thing is, eventually they find you, and then you got to take the punches. But I think that's the best example for what John's talking about. They're in a brand new weight class, but they skipped the 3 weight classes in between, and that's the fight we got.
It's crazy. Yeah, well said by you, and I thought that was a fascinating set of metrics and tweets from John Rothstein. Totally fair. Like when you go from essentially 10 Quad 1 games to 21, and we don't know how it's all going to shake out, but it's going to be something close to 21.
Sure. If not more.
The conference hasn't gotten weaker.
Right. Houston's a Quad 1. Throw them back in the mix. We're playing them twice.
Road games at Cincinnati and UCF and Houston for every team in the conference would all qualify as a Quadrant 1 game. BYU was kind of on the border last year, but BYU's metrics are going to be a top 75 team in the net rankings, which will make every game that they host for the opponent a Quadrant 1 road opportunity.
So it has us eager for the non-conference schedule, just to see what the Cougars are going to do to prepare for this. But we know there's some tough teams on there, including San Diego State, which is a Quad 1.
Typically, yeah. I mean, we're talking about the national runner-up.
Right. And so, hopefully we'll get that in the coming days. I think it's 104 days until we're into games, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to get that out pretty soon, and then we'll see. Okay, what's the build-up to, the build-up to the Big 12?
Oh my gosh.